Why is Donald Trump saying that Russia has to engage in land swaps, pretending that there has to be some sort of concessions? Because I know what you're probably asking right now. What exactly did Trump mean when he meant the Ukrainian red lines? And what is wild, and show you guys how Zelensky is a batshit crazy leader who only goes to prolong this war. This man drew up another victory plan. We covered his original victory plan, which showed that he was delusional, and his end game was to promote and start World War III. I'm not playing. His victory plan a few years ago was Ukraine to get admitted to NATO. Article 5 activates. World War III. Profit. Like, that's what the fucking plan was. The person who is described as the victim of an invasion, someone who is the smaller country fighting against a larger country. Have you ever seen this victim ever fight against peace as hard as Ukraine is fighting against it? What is that about? I thought Ukraine was the victim. Wouldn't it benefit them if the war ends? What does it say about the West that when they claim that peace will always benefit their enemies like Putin or Hamas? The best thing that we can advocate for Ukrainians, not only denazification and the end of the fascist Zelensky regime, but for peace, because they lost an entire generation of Ukrainian men. But meanwhile, EU leaders and people like Lindsey Graham, Ursula von der Leyen, they have said this on the record, as I laid out there. Their plan is to fight to the last Ukrainian, and they explain how this war is great for us because we can sacrifice a ton of Ukrainian lives while weakening our biggest geopolitical foe who we wanted to destroy for hundreds of years now, speaking from the European perspective. Europe always had this pathological hatred towards Russia, the fear of Russia. So they're like, let's sacrifice Ukraine, have Ukrainian men be kidnapped and drafted off the streets to fight and die for our war, because that can help us, because we can improve, boost the profits of our military-industrial complex, which the military-industrial complex have seen a boom in profits. Palantir, AI companies that help with targeting, they have seen a boom in profit. And I'm glad you mentioned this. I wish I could see more chats on solo streams but I usually don't. I just saw this on the side of my eye. I was just about to mention, notice how like nobody in the NATO left ever talks about Ukraine. Like, you notice that Bernie Sanders, and not even just him, because he's the obvious one, but the Bernie media industrial complex. Like, when have you ever seen like these Bernie supporters, like the Jenks, the Sam Cedars, the Hassan Pikers, who's featured on capitalist magazines? When have you ever seen them dive into the failure of their policies? Cori Bush, who many people on the left mourned when she lost, I didn't. You guys remember, I laughed hard because she voted to send billions of dollars that should have went to the hood in St. Louis. She voted to send money that should have went to our hood and send it to neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And the NATO left can't even justify their position. Jamal Bowman didn't even know what Crimea was. He didn't know what Crimea was. He didn't know what the Donbass was. But he was voting to fund and arm a war that they had no idea what was going on about. They were just taking orders from the establishment, which is why they deserve to lose. Which is why you couldn't catch me dead. Part of the pro-war progressive movement who support the self-determination of Ukrainians to fight and die for NATO. Oh, that's what Emma Vigeland said. She's like, I support Palestinian resistance. So if you support Palestinian resistance, you must support the CIA-groomed Ukrainian Nazis as well. No analysis of imperialism. Remember, they're the dumb left. Why would they have a systemic analysis of imperialism. Just go with whatever the party wants you to go. Anyway, let me get to the point, because the reason why I dogged the NATO left so much, because they pretend they're the ones who care about Ukrainians. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders, Marianne Williamson, Ro Khanna, they couldn't give a damn that the majority of the Ukrainian people. I should have. Let me find this. Oh, here it is. I think I added this to one of my hotspots. So that's why I will find it. Look at this. Ukrainian support for war effort collapses. Meanwhile, you have European leaders that's fighting against any concept of a peace deal against with Russia. You have Trump, and I'm going to explain this through the course of the stream, how he's actively working with the EU and NATO in order to sell the Ukraine war to the MAGA base. And this entire Trump-Russia summit is political theater for the neocons, so they can have an argument to bring home to their people on why war is justified. You guys understand? This is why Trump is doing this summit, right? Question me now, quote me later, because I'm going to show you guys throughout the course of this show. You have the Lindsey Graham. These are the people who are the real part of MAGA. They have Trump's ear. And they're telling him how we got to have security guarantees. We can't have any concessions on territory. We got to have Ukrainian get their land. They're saying stuff, and Trump is more happy to accept these framing of the argument in order to say to his supporters later that Russia is unreasonable for accepting these demands. You know how I know this? Because Trump has been making it obvious. Trump has been saying stuff that people think is pro-peace. And I understand why. He says, in order for there to be peace, we have to have a land swap. That's what Donald Trump said. Let's see if I find the headline where he said that. Trump swap land. And Ukrainians, oh, here it is. Here's one headline I can show you guys. Look, Russia and Ukraine peace requires land swapping. Why would Russia swap land with Ukraine when they are winning? You guys see where I'm coming from? You guys see how Trump is setting up Putin and Russia to be the bad guy here? What they see, what I think Zelensky should make a concession, and then Russia, who's winning, should make a concession that they have no reason to make. And then Trump is going to turn around when Russia is going to respond, because they have made this 100% clear that they will not give up any Ukrainian land that they seized. That has long been off the table. So now Trump is going to turn around like, hey, man, I thought we all said we got to swap land. Why won't you swap a little bit of land? You see the game that they're playing? Yeah, land swap. You guys see? I see Zoya in here. What's poppin', Zoya? Yeah, this is the peace summit in Alaska. Let's see, what was Zoya? I'm sorry, when I do solo, I can't really look at the chat as much. I'll make sure I will read all the super chats. Sarah was going to join us tonight, but she had an emergency. She's a regular on RBN, so if she can't make it today, it's not a big deal. She will always join us another time. And let me read the super chat before I continue. Bernie thinks he's Eugene Deb, but he's more Michael Rappaport. Wait till I actually get to the video where he immediately condemns Hamas again. We will get to that here very soon. But the point I was making is, imagine Ukrainians want peace, and you have Western neocons, in order to boost the profit of the defense industry, fighting for war against the will of the Ukrainian people in support of a fascist Zelensky regime. Because Zelensky is forcing every single, I was about to say military-aged man, but that's not even true. Because they got senior citizens out there now. They probably have motherfuckers with pacifiers out on the battlefield at this point. So he is forcing his population to fight an unwinnable war so he don't have to have an election. Because Ukrainians realize that they're being used as pawns by the West and pawns by Zelensky. So Zelensky wants to block all election efforts. Any chance to have election, you can have EU continue to prop him up as a person of power in post-Ukraine war, Western Ukraine. So Zelensky don't really give a fuck about the end result. It's about protecting his power. And what's wild is you will have Democrats and liberals that will support Zelensky in doing this. And you hear this all the time. Zoya, don't they say this? They say, well, Zelensky has the right to cancel elections because it's in their constitution that if they are in war, they don't have to hold elections. This is the problem with liberalism. You guys see how liberals, they are willing to accept fascism as long as it's written down on paper first. As long as you write down that you're about to do some fascist shit, and then as long as you're doing it within decorum, as long as you're not breaking any laws or regulation, if you have written down fascism, liberals will defend it 1,000 times over. They will say, yeah, Zelensky banned opposition media. Yeah, Zelensky banned opposition political parties, but don't you know he declared Sharia law? It's legal. He made fascism legal. That's liberalism in a nutshell. We know, if you study the Age of Enlightenment, if you understand how real democracy is supposed to work, it is crucial to have elections during wartime. Russia had elections during war times. You had Middle Eastern countries getting bombed by the United States. Yeah, all these countries that have been through war who had elections, because through the Enlightenment era, we realized that kings and tyrants can provoke war. Hell, another example that I forgot. We had fucking elections during the Civil War. We have elections during wartime in America. The idea that you won't have elections during war is a barbaric, pre-enlightened point of view, because if you have kings and tyrants that are willing to go to war for political purposes, to take people into war that are unpopular, what mechanism do the people have to check the ruling class towards pursuing unchecked wars? Before the age of democracy, you had none. In the age of feudalism, there is none. In fascism, there is none. In the age of feudalism, if your king wants to fight and die because you want to take some territory in France, that's the fuck what you're gonna fucking do, or you're gonna get tortured to death. That honestly, that's how it's been for the majority of human history. This fascists control the state against the working class, against their people, and forcing them to fight and die for wars. So when we had our Age of Enlightenment, when people think about how to restructure society, we realize that it's good to have elections during war so the government knows whether the people approve of their war actions or not. That's why Russia was able to have an election during the war, and it was able to dominate because the Russian people are in sync with Putin's support of the war. Now, you had Western media that was openly saying that, oh, we can't have an election in Ukraine because what if we get a new leadership and they are pro-Russia? They were saying this stuff. To me, it's crazy the stuff they say out in the open and people don't puzzle this stuff together. Every single time the discussion of a Ukrainian elections come up, that is the concern. What if there's a Ukrainian president that's not on the ball with us and they're more pro-Russia? What if this causes the end of the war effort? Russia, I need to find a receipt for this. Russia, they even offered to pause because Putin was the one who was calling for elections in Ukraine, and he's not willing to meet. And this is why he said he's not meeting with Zelensky. This is why they don't negotiate with Zelensky, because Zelensky is an unelected, illegitimate leader. So why would he meet with an unelected, illegitimate leader? So Putin has said he wants the Ukrainian voices to be heard, and they will pause all military action, and they will allow Ukraine to facilitate an election. But despite Russia saying this, the fascists in the West turn around and they say, well, we can't have elections. There's a war. We can't have elections. We have to have fascism. The West has officially lost their mind. Ukrainian support for the war effort collapses. Public sours on Washington, loses hope for quick NATO exception. That last part is cope, because when you dive into these polls, a lot of Ukrainians are waking up to the fact that NATO in the West is using them as pawns. I guess that last part of the subheadline kind of sum up the mentality that NATO was never really a viable option for Ukrainians. And a lot of them are just now realizing that NATO membership was something that was dangled in front of their face in order to lure Russia into a conflict with the West. So that's another reason why many people in Ukraine are turning against this war. So I had this headline for a while, and then actually didn't get into it because this is what I wanted to cover first. But there's a lot of background I always got to cover. What's popping? We got someone on the East Coast watching Nick in prime time. Maybe I should take some time to read some more chats. You know, I always want to read chats from Zoya's Love. Zoya's Life. Zelensky changed constitution to allow foreign corporations, oh Jesus Christ, to buy previously nationalized resources. Blackrock and Monsanto already own massive swaths that Russia captured. That's the land that U.S. wants. This is another reason why Zelensky is a traitor and another reason why he's a fascist. Like, there are people in the NATO left, like the TYT left, Hassan Piker left. They think we were being deflammatory when we say that Ukraine is a Nazi state. We are not. We understand what fascism is. It's the government-mandated suppression of the working class, the suppression of your enemies, the merging of corporation and state, the government-mandated crackdown of unions, because you guys know Ukraine banned collective bargaining rights. Meanwhile, people wonder why the ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine, in Luhansk and the Donetsk region, wants to leave this fascist state, because they literally banned collective bargaining. This is the country that Bernie Sanders defends. Bans. You guys know I always like to show you guys receipts. I got receipts on top of receipts. I've been doing this shit for years now, bro. You guys have no idea how many receipts. I got receipts for days. I can find receipts on the fucking top of my head, bro. Here it is. Trade unions strongly oppose new law that undermines labor rights, collective bargaining, and democracy. This is the country that Bernie Sanders and the NATO left viciously defends. Meanwhile, they can't stand Russia. Bernie Sanders had Putin derangement syndrome. Dr. Cornel West doesn't like Russia. None of these social democrats like Russia. Russia provides paid maternity leave to their working class. You know, something that was vetoed by the Missouri legislator, even though Missouri voters voted for it. So in America, we voted for paid maternity leave, and they vetoed it. Meanwhile, they have that in Russia. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders will turn around and tell you that Russia is an authoritarian capitalist hellhole. No, Russia is more of a social democrat country. It's what they want. It's not a communist country. It's not a socialist country. It's a capitalist country. But social democracy is capitalism. It's capitalism with a strong social safety net. So how are you going to hate on a country that has a system that you failed to deliver at home? Obviously, I want full-blown communism, but how many times have I said that if you're honest, anyone who's honest will say, even if you're a communist, that at least having a thick social safety net is better than neoliberal capitalism. That's essentially what Russia is. But you notice how the Democratic socialists and the Western leftists, they will praise the imperialists enabling Sweden and Finland, who engage in imperialism in Africa, who supports NATO. They will praise Finland and Sweden all day, but they want you to hate Russia. That old boomer Cold War mentality that's still strong among Western leftists. A new law deprives as many as 70% of Ukrainian workers of labor protections, including their bargaining rights. And bro, when have you ever seen Bernie Sanders, Hassan Piker, Zoran Mamdani? When have you guys ever seen the progressive left ever raise up the issue of fascism in Ukraine? So when we say that there's Nazis in Ukraine, guys, We are not being inflammatory. I am not saying it for clicks, because what is the first thing that Hitler and the Nazis did in Germany? One of the first things they did was go after communists, ban unions, ban the right to collective bargaining, and they immediately went after labor even before they went after the Jews. So when we say that Ukraine is a Nazi state inspired by Nazi Germany, it's because the direct historical parallels that the dumb left ignores. All right, so you guys know I enjoy my rant sessions on Nick and I, but let's see where I leave off at. Believe it or not, this is supposed to be my starting article, but I jumped around everywhere. There's a lot to discuss here. Let me read what Zoya had to say, because Zoya is our Russian expert from the USSR. In Russia, home ownership is very common, with roughly 9 out of 10 people owning their homes. That's 90%. 90%, despite the fact that the average Russian salary is way lower than the American salary. And you will hear liberals say this all the time, because this is how capitalists justify their broken system. They will explain how, don't you know, in America we have a much higher salary. We make much more money than they do in Russia. Don't you know in Russia they make way less than we do? They make half what we do. Meanwhile, they can raise a family. They can afford health care. They can afford a home. Why do capitalists think this is a fucking flex? Bragging that your people have money but can't fucking effectively raise families, can't afford homes? Essentially explaining how your money gets you nowhere in a capitalist society is not the flex you think it is. You dumbasses. How many times don't you know? You shouldn't be praising Russia. They make way less money than us, but they got health care. They got paid maternity leave. They have home ownership. I need to look into. I don't know. I gotta be careful, but I don't see a lot of Russia homelessness. I'm not gonna pretend I super researched it a lot. Let me see Russia. I would say for a fact though that Russia homelessness does not have any homeless like the United States. I gotta be careful, but I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I know it's not. You're not seeing Skid Rows in Russia. I see many footage of Moscow. I'm not seeing like the Walking Dead dinner like we see with these people who've been abandoned by the capitalist class. In the capitalist class, they don't even think about doing anything systemically to change it. They say, no, let's just ramp up the police state. Let's make it illegal to be homeless. Let's spend a lot of money on anti-homeless infrastructure instead. All right, let me actually get into the story now. That's a good intro rant. So my thesis I made, and I said this in the beginning, but now I'm refocusing. Let's get to the Trump-Putin summit. And my thesis, and what a lot of people are missing, because there are a lot of people that say, oh, I'm glad that Trump is pursuing peace. At least he's pursuing peace and Biden didn't, which is something you can say. Like, you can say, I'm glad that Trump is talking to Russia, even though Biden did it. But you have to understand, and this is what a lot of people are missing their analysis, that Trump plays a very particular role for the ruling class. And we was like, man, wonder why they allowed Trump to win. This is why Donald Trump was allowed to win, not only to facilitate the technocratic fascist state, but to sell the Ukraine war to his MAGA base. The Ukraine war was falling in popularity, especially all over Europe. The right was questioning it. So Biden's, his strategies are, the liberals already hate Russia because of Russiagate. Russia denied their queen, Hillary Clinton, her God-ordained role as president. So you don't have to do any imperial gymnastics or jiu-jitsu to trick liberals into supporting war. You guys have to understand the war machine propaganda, it never stops, bro. They got people on the payroll that do nothing but figure out how to fucking sell war to the American people. So you think they didn't have a plan to sell the Ukraine war to the MAGA base who was starting to question it? The idea was to convince Trump to have the same hardline red lines as Joe Biden and then blame Putin for not accepting them and then go back to his bag of base and say that they're being unreasonable. Like EU leaders pressed Trump to defend their security interests. So they had a meeting before that Trump was supposed to meet. And they was like, we gotta set Trump down. We gotta let him know that, man, we can't really end this fucking war. This war is too important for our fucking gravy train. And Trump, in this meeting that he had with European leaders before their meeting with Russia, he apparently agrees with the Ukrainian red lines. Look, and this is the part of the story people are missing. You guys see the setup that Donald Trump is engaging in? Trump agrees with Ukraine red lines with Europe before Putin summit. Oh, here we go. Here we fucking go. What do you mean you agree with Ukraine red lines? Why are you even meeting with Putin then? What is the fucking point of this meeting? The only thing that Russia is going to tell you, they're going to look at you in the face and tell you you are out of your fucking mind. Russia is winning. The West is getting hammered for this politically. The West is demilitarizing themselves, trying to maintain this war. Meanwhile, Trump is going to enter this meeting with Putin with the posture that he's going to uphold Ukrainian demands. Meanwhile, this is Russia. Russia will not make territorial concessions in Donetsk, Luhansk, Kyrgyz, and Zaporizhzhia regions. Territorial structures of Russia is enshrined in the country's constitution. So the question that everyone been asking for people who thought that Donald Trump, at least the question I've been asking for people who thought that Donald Trump was going to pursue peace, why is Donald Trump saying that Russia has to engage in land swaps, pretending that there has to be some sort of concessions? Because I know what you're probably asking right now. What exactly did Trump mean when he meant the Ukrainian red lines? And what is wild, and show you guys how Zelensky is a batshit crazy leader who only goes to prolong this war. This man drew up another victory plan. We covered his original victory plan, which showed that he was delusional and his end game was to promote and start World War III. I'm not playing. His victory plan a few years ago was Ukraine get admitted to NATO. Article 5 activates. World War III. Profit. Like, that's what the fucking plan was. And now, before the Putin-Russian summit, Zelensky and Ukraine drew up another fucking key list of demands. And they are probably the most delusional list of demands we have ever seen since the start of this war, my friends. What is this? What is this? Russia must pay up to $1 trillion? Have you guys ever studied history? Name me one time in modern history where the party that is winning the war turns around and pays reparations. Meanwhile, Ukraine and Zelensky wants to make these demands as the key demands. Do these demands look like someone who is serious about achieving peace? Who has any sort of idea of the situation that they are in? Meanwhile, Donald Trump, his strategy is to uphold and promote these demands with Russia. Look at this. This is why I just show you guys. Donald Trump plans to, look, Trump agrees on Ukrainian red lines. Donald Trump is just like Joe Biden. He's just doing it differently. How does MAGA not understand that? If you want to MAGA people like, well, Jeffrey Epstein is just a distraction. We got to focus. He's fucking you guys over on Ukraine too. So if Trump agrees with the Ukrainian red lines, this shows that he is absolutely not engaging with the Putin meeting in good faith. The first point is what I explained earlier. So look, first a solid ceasefire, then an exchange of territories. What do you mean an exchange of territories? Either you can take the territories from Russia or you cannot. Why would Russia ever exchange territory to end a war that they're not even in a rush to end? They have complete control and they are winning this war. But Donald Trump and the EU wants to force Russia to give up land they have no reason to. Now let's go back to this receipt I showed earlier, where Russia has made it 100% clear that territorial concessions is off the table. So what is the West playing at? Is this meeting even real? No, it's not. This meeting is only designed to set up Putin as being unreasonable so he can turn around. And everyone is playing their role in this story. You have CNN and the liberal class like, oh my God, I can't believe Putin and Trump is becoming friends again. I can't believe that Donald Trump is undermining Ukraine. They're pretending that Donald Trump is actually serious. The Democrat media is pretending that Trump is serious. Fox News is pretending that Trump has Putin on the ropes. They're like, oh my God. They're like, Putin is meeting with Trump because he must be on the ropes, man. He must be desperate for a deal. Bro, the psyop that they are playing, this shit is a science, bro. Like, what I've been seeing over the last few days is crazy because no one is even on the same plane of reality about what's actually going on. Now look at this here, another tell that Trump is only meeting with Putin in order to escalate the war. Trump tells European leaders U.S. could provide security guarantees. We're back at the security guarantees. Biden said that he wanted security guarantees. This is what is the original red line. This is one of the reasons why Russia invaded Ukraine. It's to stop United States and European presence in Ukraine. Russia wants them all gone. So why would they agree to security guarantees when you have troops in Ukraine? This defeats the entire purpose of forcing Ukraine not to be in NATO is so they can be a buffer state. This defeats the entire purpose. Trump is beyond unserious. Like we are back to the Biden administration. Shit never changes. Unhindered ascension to NATO in the EU. This man Zelensky is truly on fucking drugs. I'm not exaggerating. This motherfucker is literally on drugs. He was high as a kite today. I didn't have to say. What if I find the video? I thought everyone was tweeting about. Man, this man is out of his fucking mind. The ascension to NATO, the third bullet point, is probably the key fucking premise of this conflict. And Zelensky and Ukraine saying they must have this for peace. These are not serious people. But every single news organization is pretending that this is a serious conversation, that Donald Trump is serious about peace. You have people that to this day are saying that Putin and Donald Trump are close friends, that Trump is secretly working for Putin. Why is he dissing Zelensky? Trump is working hand to hand with NATO, Friedrich Merz, Keir Starmer, Ursula von der Leyen. They're working side by side and playing you motherfuckers and working you motherfuckers like pro wrestling. I'm a pro wrestling fan. I know a work when I see one. Motherfuckers who watch, we know a work. Motherfuckers, if you into pro wrestling, I know some fake ass shit when I see it, bro. I know a fucking work. This is a giant fucking work. And it's crazy that people don't see it. Let me continue the rest of these demands. No reduction of the army and no cessation of aid. So these are not serious. These are the core issues that Russia have. Meanwhile, Zelensky said, hey, yo, you know all those concerns that you guys have? We're not negotiating for peace for any of those points. We're not conceding anything. I know we're losing. I know we're being depopulated. I know our war effort only relies on the West. We are relying on them to continue this war effort. But I promise to God we won't negotiate. Who do you guys think is telling Zelensky this? Because how does this position make any sense whatsoever. This doesn't make any sense. If you are the victim of a war, and this goes back to my initial statement at the very beginning of the stream, when have you ever seen someone who's a victim of war be so desperate not to end the conflict? You have Hamas, who is fighting a just war of liberation, where Hamas offered to drop their arms and disband if a Palestinian state was created. This is what they never tell you in the media. Hamas was literally willing to lay down their arms for a Palestinian state and for the end of the war. Hamas was willing to do that. You know, the people that say it's crazy and radical, and they're fighting a just war. Meanwhile, Ukraine, they want this war to continue. Why would that be? Why are these questions that no one in the left are asking? I know why this is. I'm just asking rhetorically. Let me find this article I know I can pull up real quick. Ukraine battle innovations reshape. Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't even see this one. Look, this is why they want this war to continue. Ukrainian innovations are redefining the role of drones. There's an article I'm looking for in particular where they was explaining how the ruling class is using Ukraine as a test bed for battlefield innovations. What the fuck? Where the article at? Battlefield innovations. Ukraine. I know it's a CNN. Oh, here it is. This is the exact article I was referencing. Look, this is an article I've never seen before. Ukraine's battlefield innovations reshape global military thinking. This is the whole point, was to turn Ukraine into a country full of war guinea pigs, essentially. Damn, the CNN website is fucking horrible. I just now finally got this motherfucker. Here it is. How Ukraine became a test bed for Western weapons and battlefield innovation. This is what Bernie Sanders and AOC and the Western left supported. They supported Ukraine being used as a pet project by the military-industrial complex. And they wasn't, as you guys see with these headlines, they wasn't necessarily shy about this. I don't remember their name. I wish I did, but I remember there was an EU official, some military motherfucker that was explaining how they was like, hey man, everyone on the right who's critical of this war saying that we get nothing out of it. You don't understand. We are sending Ukraine our weapons, which allowed us to reinvent and renew our weapon stockpiles. We have a completely modernized military because we gave everything to Ukraine, and that forced us to modernize our military. This is why we've seen such a boom in the military-industrial complex. You know how many times people on the right fucking explain outright, because the right don't have to do the shit that Joe Biden and Ro Khanna do. Like Ro Khanna and Joe Biden and the liberal class, they pretend that fighting this war is a fight of democracy. We're going to stand up for democracy. We're going to stand up for human rights. So that's how they sell the war to dumb liberals. But right-wingers, they fucking love imperialism, war, death, murder. They don't have to do none of that bullshit. They essentially say, hey, man, don't be a fucking pussy. We got to support this war because this is how we fucking test our new battlefield innovations and revamp our military. Another reason why Donald Trump approved of a $1 billion military-industrial complex boon. Military-industrial budget, sorry. A $1 trillion military budget. I found this video. I didn't see this video, actually. I'm kind of curious. Here Che Boyles, he's a friend of our show. Zelensky is now so desperate to avoid peace. He's telling Trump that Putin's trip to Alaska is a bluff. He's going to swallow the whole of... Oh, I want to hear the video. I actually haven't heard this video clip.
Told President Trump and all our European allies, Putin is bluffing. He's trying to push before the Alaska meeting on all directions of our front line. Russia.
Going back to my question. When have you ever seen a leader of a weaker country be this desperate to prevent peace? Who is he listening to? Who is giving him the direction to say this kind of stuff? You guys think the West will be okay? You guys think they haven't had any huddles? He is 100% getting the direction the West of saying this nonsense, which is only meant to expand the war.
Wants to occupy the whole of Ukraine. This is his wish.
He said that Putin wants to occupy the entirety of Ukraine. That has not been his demand. He's one to allow you to keep your little fucking puppet government. Anyway, let's continue.
And Putin is bluffing that sanctions is nothing and they don't work. In fact, sanctions are hitting Russian war economy hard. It's true. Russia has a lot of weapons, many times over than we have. Artillery, let's say, for three times more. But they sustaining 3 times more losses. And I said it, about it to our European friends, to President Trump, that Putin definitely does not want peace. He wants to occupy Ukraine. And we all understand that Putin cannot fool anyone. We need future and further.
So essentially, in a nutshell, he said, no, guys, we can't ever have peace ever. No negotiations. War forever. And there are people who actually think this man is not a tyrant. Once again, I always got to pick on the ridiculous social democrats. People like Bernie Sanders, Sam said, these people have no fucking criticism of Zelensky. They find it reprehensible that we criticize this man. He is probably the greatest sellout leader, one of the most failed leaders in modern history. He led his people down a war and got an entire generation wiped out. Ukraine will never be the same again, and he wants never-ending war, despite the fact that his own people imposed say they want peace. Go back to my point in the beginning. Why do you think that is? That is because Zelensky wants to stay in power forever. So everyone is reacting to the ridiculous proposal that Zelensky is making. This is why, like, Putin is like, why should I even talk to this unelected clown? Not only does Zelensky want Putin to pay reparations, he wants Putin to return Crimea. It's unbelievable that this man has not been fucking removed from power. He's batshit crazy. Exactly how the West likes him. And despite how crazy he is, Donald Trump is 100% on board. I'll show you guys the red lines that Ukraine was making. Now let's revisit this headline so you guys can see how fucking ridiculous this is. You guys see how Donald Trump is setting this up as a failure from the very beginning. Trump agrees on Ukraine red lines. What do you mean you agree with Ukraine's red line? Why are we even meeting? Why are we even doing this? Because Donald Trump warns Russia of severe consequences if Putin doesn't agree to end the Ukraine war. Here it is, guys. The MAGA psyop. So now, after Donald Trump supports Zelensky's horrific, delusional, as this person says, utterly incoherent demands, he's then going to turn around and tell the media that if Russia doesn't accept at least a few of these demands and end the war, there's going to be severe consequence. And then Trump is going to ramp up tensions against Russia. Once again, you guys see how the ratchet effect works? There was people who thought that Donald Trump was going to de-escalate with with Russia. Now do you guys see why I don't give Trump credit for at least talking to Putin? That's what many people said. Isn't he better than Biden because at least he's talking to Putin? As my thesis, like I laid out in the beginning of the show, this is Trump's way of selling the war, which is different than Biden's. It's more complicated. Biden didn't have to do anything like this. Trump does. The job of these politicians at all times is to sell war. And now look at who's reporting this. You guys see how this fucking WWE production works? Now you have CNN. Here the CNN segment. Trump warns of severe consequences if Putin doesn't agree to end Ukraine war. They send these marks up. And we've been doing this for a few years like me, man. It's crazy when you see these same patterns play out. That's why it's almost humorous to me to see this. Let's watch a little bit of this.
President Trump setting the stage for a potential second meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin if the summit on Friday goes well. He's also issuing an urgent new warning as they prepare to meet face-to-face. Listen to this.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
No specifics, but tough talk that comes just hours after speaking with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders this morning. Zelensky says he wants an immediate ceasefire before a peace deal can be negotiated. For Ukraine, peace cannot come soon enough. Russian forces have been launching a brutal offensive to claw territory away, and the UN says that July saw the highest number of civilians killed in Ukraine since the first months of Russia's full-scale invasion back in 2022. Let's take you now live to Kyiv with CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh. Nick, is there hope in Ukraine that this time, somehow, negotiations with Russia will be different?
I think there's a desperate need for peace, but I think there's little hope that Russian President Vladimir Putin genuinely wants that. That has been the undertone of everything that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has been saying over the past days, and borne out by Russian advances, Ukrainian intelligence about Russia preparing for further military maneuvers. Look, we heard from Zelensky today reaffirming that if any deal is struck, they do not want to give up, or they will not give up parts of the Donetsk region that Russia is now fiercely fighting for, that it's not.
Zelensky will not give up the Donetsk region. You guys think this is someone who's serious for peace? Here's Friedrich Merz, the Blackrock Prime Minister of Germany, who rejected any agreement that includes any territories to be given to Russia. Borders may not be changed through violence. And this is what every single European leader is saying. So essentially, every single leader in Europe, their position is, we will not end this war against Russia until Ukraine gets the Donbass back, gets Luhansk. This is a crazy position that is unreasonable. You are essentially calling for never-ending war. Are you going to fight to the last Ukrainian? And they said they're down to do that. European leaders have put pressure on Zelensky to lower the recruitment age even more. And after kidnapping people out the streets, after losing an entire generation of Ukrainian men, I've seen so many videos like this. Shout out to our friend Che Boyles for highlighting this again. Because this is what the Western media would never tell you. No one in the NATO left will ever tell you this. No one who supports the Ukraine proxy war will tell you this. They will say stupid shit that is designed to get you to convince people to support in war. They will say, "Oh, Russia has been exposed as weak. Russia has been exposed as weak. Hey, don't you know Ukraine was winning? Oh man, if only we got more aid to Ukraine, they could be winning this war." Complete nonsense that's only designed like. The West always selling the idea that they're successful at war, the idea that we had this great military. The idea is to convince you that they're winning so you will support the war. So they never explain to you guys how Ukrainian men are being pulled off the streets. There are massive desertion in the Ukrainian military, low morale. You had 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers who abandoned their post. So you understand the position of the West, the position of Bernie Sanders, Lindsey Graham, and all these people essentially is that these people have to have a gun pointed to their head to fight to the last Ukrainian. All these motherfuckers have to die so Zelensky can have the Donbass region, so that Ukraine can be a NATO state. Do these look like armed trained killers who are ready to defeat Russia? All these sound is really needed on this. But these are the people who are being accepted as Ukrainian soldiers. I think pictures of Ukrainians, these people, they increased the military age, lowered the draft age. They got fucking senior citizens, damn near. People with arthritis on the battlefield. No offense to anyone who have arthritis, but that just shows how down bad Ukraine is. You have liberals that in the beginning of this war, they'll post some pictures of Ukrainian women on the battlefield. They're like, yeah, you have Ukrainian women defending their land. See, women can fight wars too. This is liberal feminism. So the people who actually care about Ukraine are the people who want this conflict to end in the first place. The people in the NATO left, the progressives, and the reason why I say this is because this is the left with power in the West. This is the entirety of the left in Europe, the entirety of the Green parties in Europe. All the left organizations in Europe support the NATO proxy war. This is the standard position, is that we got to support this madness forever and sacrifice Ukrainians for the honor of NATO. And then they think they're the ones who pro-Ukraine. Isn't that interesting?